Good morning, everybody. Glad to see you here jumping into the Saturday morning Dev Mentor Dave live stream. Excuse me. I apologize. My voice is a little rough this morning. It probably is often on the morning live streams compared to the afternoon or evening live streams. So you're probably used to it, but it feels a little scratchy for me today. But welcome to the live stream here every Saturday morning, generally, except for the next couple, which I'll get into that in a minute. But generally, we're here on Saturday mornings at 10 o'clock Central United States time. And right now, we're doing a lot of discussion of our DeepPockets project, which if you want more information about that, there's lots of videos and live streams that you can find. And there's actually a live stream what do you call it, playlist on the YouTube channel if you want to kind of start back at the beginning and get more information about it as we go through. But we'll also be having a time for Q&A today, most likely, and then I actually want to take a step back and talk about some things surrounding projects in general, not just the Dev Mentor Day DeepPockets project, but also how these realities affect that project. So it does kind of tie in a little bit, even though it's a little bit of a different live stream this morning. So again, welcome. If you are watching live, feel free to jump in the chat and say hello. If this is the first time that you've been on the Dev Mentor Dave live stream, tell us where you're watching from, and we'll probably forget. But I try to remember as much as I can. We don't have like hundreds of thousands of people on the live stream, so it's usually a little bit easier to remember where people are from, but no guarantees. So yeah, if you're watching live, jump in the chat. That's the best way to get a hold of me, and that's the best way to interact with other people who are watching live as well. Sometimes if you have questions, they'll answer them before I get to them. But speaking of which, if you do have a question, try to use the @DevMentorDave prefix. That'll usually give me like a little red box with my name in it that lets me know that you're trying to get in contact with me. You're trying to speak specifically to me. If you just have a general question, go ahead and put it in there, and I'm sure somebody will answer along the way. I'll try to answer it if I see it, but that red tag, the @DevMentorDave, gives me a better notification that you have a question for me. As we go through, I will be checking the chat to see what questions or comments you might have, so feel free to do that as we go. If there is a question that you put out there that's a little bit off topic, I'll probably save it to the end and try to stick more with the ones that are relevant to what we're currently talking about at the time. So we got a few people jumping in here. Mel, good to see you. I think this one's new for me. Is it Unluce or Unluce? Let me know if I'm pronouncing that right. I don't know. And then Ali, good to see you. All right. And I don't know if you've been here before, but let me know. And Lunche, if you A, if I'm saying that right, and then B, where you're from. And if you've been here before. No worries. You are new. Okay, cool. I'm just going to call you Big U. How's that? Good to have you. All right. So if you're watching live, or if you're watching later, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that just helps the channel out. Helps I would say Google. It's Google, YouTube. It helps YouTube know that people are interested in this and they find it helpful. So if you don't mind, hit the like button for me. Some of you already have. Thank you very much for that. And then if you are not subscribed and you want to get notifications when we do go live or when I upload a video, which isn't as frequently as it was before, then you definitely want to get notified when that happens. So hit the subscribe button. That way you get those notifications. Also, on that note, we are still trying to get 5,000 subscribers by the end of 2024. All right, so the end of whatever year it is. 2024. It's been a long couple weeks, so my brain's not completely there. So by the end of 2024, we're trying to hit 5,000 subscribers. We're at 3,121, I think, this morning. So we are just past halfway in the year. And we're just past halfway in our subscription numbers. So that's awesome. So if you're not watching, subscribe. Or I mean, if you are watching, if you're not watching, how are you going to subscribe if you're not watching? If you are watching and you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel. And if you know any other junior devs, especially who you think might benefit from what we're talking about, the videos, the live streams, things like that, share it with others and encourage them to subscribe as well. All right, I'm probably gonna need some coffee here. So freshly made, Mel, freshly made. Mel says people watch less YouTube in the summer. They go outside and touch grass. Maybe. I don't know. There's a lot of developers that are like me and don't really go outside at all. So we'll see. We'll see how that works. It might just have to pick up when we come to the fall and people are, stuck back in their homes more, especially in areas that have more inclement weather than others. So we'll see. I'm not worried about it. It's just a fun goal to try to reach. So if we don't reach it, oh well. If we do reach it, that's awesome. But CW says summer. What is that? Yeah, that's that really nasty long period between the short periods of spring and fall when it's actually okay to go outside. That's the worst part of the year, basically. That and the winter. The two longest parts of the year are the worst parts of the year, summer and winter. So there you go. I prefer not to go outside in most of them. I do once in a great while walk outside if it's just like the perfect temperature, a nice breeze, not too sunny. I tend to burn pretty easily, so that's I'm not a big outside fan. In fact, my wife calls me the great indoorsman. So that's maybe I should change my channel to that. I don't know, the great indoorsman. Oh my goodness. I forget, CW, where are you at? It's always hot and humid. I'm assuming Middle East, if that's the case. Or maybe Brazil. Malaysia. There you go. Yeah. Ugh. Malaysia. Yeah, hot and humid. Then you're just used to it, right? that's just how it is. People turn pink. I turn pink or very red, one of the two. I got several years ago, actually about 6 years ago, I think. We went on our first cruise and we were in the Bahamas, and I'd never been that close to the equator before, and I got burned really, really bad. It was pretty bad. So, and even today, that if I go outside, the sun feels different after that. So yeah, I'm definitely an inside person. All right, so some project updates for everybody, project / live stream updates. I am going to be out of town the next 2 weeks, and I'll actually be traveling on both of those Saturdays, so I won't be able to do the live stream, and I'll be in a location that doesn't have great Wi-Fi signal. Unfortunately, I still have to try to work from there, but there's not great Wi-Fi up there. Excuse me. So I'm gonna be I'm not gonna be live for next week or the week after that. However, what I am gonna do is I'm gonna have a video that will go out late next week that will kind of give you some homework to work on. Or, I'm sorry, late this week. So probably Friday. Well, it's Saturday, so technically next week. So this coming Friday, I'm gonna have a video that comes out with some explanation and a homework assignment for the Dev Mentor Dave DeepPockets project, and that is going to be not a code homework assignment. So you'll need to upload that to the homework assignments repo, and I'll put all that information in the video as well. Exactly. I'm going away, but I'm still giving you stuff to do. So that's gonna happen, kind of take the place of the live stream for next week, and then the week after that, we're actually just going to have a live stream that following Monday, which is the 29th. So we'll have a live stream on the 29th, Monday, night, probably around 7 p.m. my time, maybe a little bit earlier depending on what I've got going on. But I'll make sure that there's plenty of notice out there for that. I know nighttime isn't always the best for everybody. My nighttime isn't always the best for everybody, but that way we can get out there and start talking about some of the things, talk through the homework, and any ticket number 3, community ticket number 3 items that we need to look at from a PR standpoint. So that's basically what's happening. Then we'll be back on August 3rd for the regular live stream on Saturday mornings. Then I'll miss another week. So this is kind of, it's summer, right? It's summer. Everybody's in and out. So we'll figure out. I'm going to be out again over the weekend for something else, for board games. I'm gonna be with some friends playing some board games all weekend, so I will not be thinking about you in the Dev Mentor Dave channel. So I apologize, but it won't be on my mind. I'll be stressing out over trying to beat my friends at board games. So there's going to be a little bit of volatility here over the next month or so, but we will either have live streams at different times, or we'll make up for them with videos and homework and things like that. So we will stay in contact, so don't worry. I'm not going anywhere. Just things are going to be a little rocky here, especially from a Saturday standpoint over the next few weeks. Excuse me. I think that's everything. Oh, I still need to update ticket number 3 for the community project. Just to remind you, that has to do with building backend APIs, the CRUD. If you remember correct, what we talked about for that. If you don't, go back and watch the video where we talked about backend CRUD. That's what ticket number 3 came from. And last time I started working on ticket number 3, I didn't save it right, and it apparently is blank. So I'll need to put that information back in. So I'll get that back into ticket number 3, and you guys can work on that for when we go live next on the 29th. So anyway, that's project update, live stream update, kind of how everything is going to happen over the next few weeks. If you have any questions, obviously you can throw them in the chat. You can leave them on the comment section if you're watching this later on. But that's where we're at from a project standpoint, moving forward. All right. Told you I was going to need coffee today. Yeah, Mel says maybe ticket 3 is bad luck. Maybe that's. Wait, are you just trying to get out of doing ticket 3? Is that what's going on here? That's what I'm feeling. That's the vibe that I'm getting, is that you're just trying to get out of it by calling it bad luck. Yeah, I figured. I'm not completely dumb. I am dumb sometimes, but not completely dumb. Okay. So today I wanted to talk about something that I've experienced, and even something that, I've kind of been going through personally with projects and things like that. And something that a lot of times we don't really talk about, especially when we're trying to get new people into the dev world, when we're trying to encourage people to learn and grow and things like that. We don't always talk about the negative side of things. But I think it's important for you to get a full view of what it's like to work on a project. And again, that's the whole point of the DeepPockets project, is to help you kind of get some experience that you might not get just doing your own learning and your own, like, following tutorials and your own projects and things like that. You're not going to get as much of the things that you will get with the DeepPockets project. Now, again, DeepPockets is not it's not perfect. It's not a real project in the sense that, we have clients that have paid money, and now we've got deadlines and things like that. So there is still a little bit of a difference, but hopefully there's more things involved in this project that are going to help you as you hopefully get a job, as you work with other team members and things like that in the future. So part of dealing with those projects and getting a job, and whether it's a freelance job or whether it's a job for an actual company and doing, working on projects for them, you're going to run into some very similar things. And so I want to kind of take a few minutes here this morning, probably more than a few, let's be honest. I'll talk way too long about this. But I want to take a few minutes this morning and kind of talk through some reality checks when it comes to working on projects and things that you're going to run into, and struggles that you're going to face, and just hopefully help you be prepared at the end of the day. Because I think if you're not prepared, that's when frustration really sets in, and a lot of junior developers walk away. I've even worked with a junior developer in the past who I think it was the first junior developer that I really worked with, that I had the opportunity to kind of help and mentor a little bit, at least try to. And so I'm sure I was getting, wasn't the best mentor at the time, seeing as that was my first one. But I know that this person ended up kind of basically quitting. I think technically they were let go from the job, but they had pretty much kind of quit before that happened. And so I want to hopefully give you some tools, give you some knowledge and some tools when it comes to working on real world projects, that will help you be able to stay the course and make it through in a way that keeps your sanity. So that's the goal for the kind of the lecture time this morning as we dive in here at the beginning. Let's see. CW says creating Cedar's ticket needs some attention. Check previous check-ins. There's some problems. Yeah, we're gonna look at the PRs that are currently in there, CW, at the end. So we'll take a look at that and see what's going on. Okay. So let's get real about projects. I think the first thing that I want you to remember is that this is not an easy job. I think most of you know that, just because it's not easy to learn. It's not easy to just jump in and go. There's a massive mental drain that happens, not just in the learning process, but even in the working process. When you are writing code all day long, which that's not exactly accurate. You're not really writing code all day long. You're doing a lot of thinking all day long, and sometimes you're writing code that matches or that goes with the thinking. Hopefully, if you've thought through things well. But there's a big mental strain. In fact, I just recently had one of my sons start learning coding, really actually spending time, and he's going to do it over multiple weeks here during the summer. That's kind of his summer job or project, right? Because he's too young to have a real job. And so I want him to, he's interested in it, so I'm not forcing him to do it, don't worry. But I want him to actually spend real time doing it, not just like an hour here and an hour there. So he's been coming in while I've been working. He's been coming in and learning the coding process, not from me, but from videos. And I remember after the first couple of days, he said to me, "Man, now I know why you seem so tired all the time," because that is it's mentally straining to just learn all these things. So I definitely know that everybody who's on here, you know what I'm talking about, right? This is a mentally straining job, not just the learning process, but even when you're doing it full time, there is a heavy mental load. And it's not just the coding part at that point, because there's a whole lot of other stressors that come into the situation when it comes to actually working on a project for a real client, whether that's as a freelancer or whether that's as an employee at a company. Whatever that looks like, you've got a lot of other pressures that are bearing down on you outside of just figuring out the coding aspects of the project. And so I kind of wanted to talk through some of that life cycle process, and then what some of those struggles are, and really at the end of this, how can you deal with these, or how can you plan to deal with these? And keep in mind, you're never going to do this perfectly. I don't do this perfectly. In fact, I've been having a little bit of a struggle with this myself lately. And my wife had to tell me to go to bed last night because I was just kind of not really there, just from doing a lot of development work that I've been doing lately. So this is a little bit fresh in my mind due to my own experiences, but also I had a few comments recently from different people around the DeepPockets project and just questions about their involvement and things like that. And so I wanted to kind of walk through this and just make sure that you guys have a hopefully more clear understanding of what typically happens in a project so that you can move forward successfully. So with most projects, we typically start off with a little bit of excitement, right? And I think most of you probably got that when we first announced, hey, we're going to be doing a community project, and then after like 3 months, we hadn't even started coding yet, and I think we had a lot of people that kind of lost interest over time. But there was a lot of excitement from the community when we first talked about doing a community project. And that's the same way if you're doing freelance work and you get a real client, that's an exciting thing. You've got, hopefully it's paid, but you've got a real project to work on. You've got a real opportunity to do something cool. And it may not be a big project, maybe a small project, but there's a little bit of excitement there. There's a little bit of intrigue. There's this desire to build something new. And we, a lot of times, if we're not careful, we can just start to jump into the project and not really plan it out the way that we need to, because of that excitement. So we have to kind of carry that, take hold of that excitement a little bit. But that's kind of like the first step, is we get this project and there's excitement. Even at a job, I think about the company that I work for. We work with lots of different clients on lots of different projects. We don't have our own project that we build where we do client work. And so it's kind of exciting every time we start a new project. For me, to kind of plan it out. It's exciting for the devs to start building something new, even if we're using the same technology that we've used on other projects. It's still exciting to do something new, right? And so we tend to go through this initial excitement phase, and there's multiple reasons for that. It might be an opportunity for us to learn something new. For example, we've had several projects at work that have been things that I didn't know, so I was excited to start it because it would give me opportunity to learn something that I didn't already know. And so there's some excitement there. There's some excitement if you're getting paid. That's always a good thing. If you're starting a project that's paying you, whether that's because you work for a company or whether it's a freelance job, or it could just be excitement because it's a really cool project idea. I don't know if anybody really thought that budgeting software was a really cool project idea for the DeepPockets project, but there might be other projects that you come across in your development career that you think, man, this is a really cool project. I want to be a part of this. I want to be involved in this, right? So that beginning phase of the project is always it's the one that draws us in, right? It makes us excited, and we enjoy the idea of being able to participate in this project. But depending on the planning process and depending on how many issues we run into early on, that excitement can last for a while, or it can be it could go away pretty quickly. It kind of depends on what happens, and this is what I call kind of the struggle. This is the day-to-day struggle, and there's lots of different things that are involved in this aspect, and we're gonna look at that here in a second, because I want to go through a lot of those and just give you an idea of some of the things that you're probably going to run into from a struggle standpoint. But we start off with the excitement, and then we hit kind of this brick wall, right? And this brick wall is what I call the struggle. It's the day-to-day grind of working on the project. And that really is, to be honest, the bulk of the project for most projects, whether that's a freelance project, whether that's an open source community project, whether that's a project that you're working on for your company. That the vast majority of your project is going to be a slog. It's going to be a struggle. It's going to be this time where you just have to work through it, and it's not necessarily fun anymore. That's why the title of the thumbnail said "not fun, no more fun" or something like that. I can't remember what I put. I think it's "no more fun," but that really is to be honest with you, the bulk of the project. Now, I'm not saying that it can't be fun or that you can't find fun in it or that it can't be enjoyable. There are times that when I'm in the middle of a project and I'm writing code, that I still enjoy it. And I think that's something that you need to take stock of as you're going through projects and really ask yourself, do I still enjoy doing this? Not necessarily do I enjoy the issues that I'm running into from a struggle standpoint, but do I still enjoy writing code? Are these struggles dissuading me from continuing to learn, continuing to grow, continuing to write code? If they are, you might want to take a look and see if this is really the career for you. And again, I want to more encourage people to be a part of it than I do to push them away. But I think it's a good reality check. If you're going through a project and you're going through the slog part of the project, which is most of it, then you feel like you just can't do this. Like you, not that you can't do it from an ability standpoint, but like you cannot see yourself doing this project after project after project, then you probably should really reconsider whether or not this is the career for you. But if you don't feel that way, then that's a good sign that you're probably in the right place. So, so you've got the excitement phase and you've got the struggle phase. And that struggle phase really leads us to a decision point, right? So there's a decision point in the struggle where, and it may happen multiple times throughout the struggle, where you're going to have to decide, A, if this is right for you, B, are you actually going to continue? Are you going to make the decision to continue to work through and fight through and struggle through to the end? Or maybe you need to take a break from it for a while. Maybe it's just a personal project, or maybe it's a freelance project and you just need to take a break for a week or something like that, to kind of let things settle down and give you some rest and things like that. Or you might just reach a point where you need to walk away. Maybe that's walking away from a personal project, or walking away from, a project that's for a client as a freelance. And that's really hard to do, especially from a financial standpoint. Typically you're gonna have some issues with a client from a payment standpoint if you just walk away from a project. So that's not usually a choice that you get to make, but sometimes you could. It may also be that there are some factors going on from an employment standpoint, if you're working for an employer, that are compounding the issues of the project, and you may feel like you need to walk away from that specific employment opportunity and find something else too. So there's lots of different ways that lots of different decisions that you make at this decision point. But hopefully the vast majority of the time that decision is to slog through, is to push through to the end. And then of course, if you choose that, then there's the completion phase, and that completion phase really involves, wrapping up all your code, fixing any bugs, and then actually deploying the project to a production environment for the client. So it's actually out there, it's actually live and usable in the real world. And that's a very interesting phase, because it's kind of a mixture of struggle and excitement, right? Because you start with excitement, then you go through struggle, and then you have these decision points along the way. Am I really going to do this? And then you hit this last phase of completion. And there's a lot of struggle there, especially if you haven't done a project all the way to completion before, you haven't pushed a project live. So there's lots of little new things probably that you're going to learn. Even it seems like I learn something new every time I push a project live. It's just weird. There's always some new thing that I have to deal with. So you go to completion, but as you're pushing live, as you're completing bugs, as you're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, you're crossing the finish line, then that excitement begins to ramp back up. And what's interesting is when you actually complete a project and you actually get it live and the client is happy, whether that's a personal client or a client for the company, you completely forget all the struggle and the slog that it goes through. It's kind of like giving birth, right? So you go through all the labor pains and it's horrible, but as soon as the baby's born, you kind of forget all the pain that you went through because you just are excited that you have the baby. At least that's what I've been told. I've never had to do that myself. So, but that's kind of what happens, and then we foolishly choose to take on another project, right? So we start back at the excitement phase, end with the excitement phase, with the conclusion of the project. So it's important to understand that process, right? Because if you don't understand what's going to happen in that process, you're not going to be ready for it. You're not going to be prepared. And when you hit that struggle, when you hit those decision points along the way, you might end up making the wrong decision, not just from a career standpoint, but for the client, for your relationships, for lots of different things, right? So you want to make sure that you understand how that progress is typically going to go, and that will give you the information that you need to make the right decisions, hopefully. And sometimes that decision is walking away. So I'm not saying that that's the wrong decision. I'm just saying if you understand the life cycle of the project, it will get better in the end. It'll feel better in the end. All right, before we jump into talking about some of the struggles that you're going to face in that struggle period, let me look at some of the comments here. Let's see. CW says we should form a software developer union to protect devs. I'm not a big union fan. They definitely serve their purpose in certain areas, especially locally. But I think they can be really helpful locally. I'm not a big fan of like national unions and things like that. But I think more than likely there's so many developers, you'd have to get the vast majority on the same page, and I think that's going to be hard to do, especially because it's not just about hiring, it's also about freelance work. Most devs I know have at least one freelance project going on at a time, whether it's paid or not. So yeah, having a union sounds great, but because it would be nice to standardize a lot of things, right? It'd be nice to standardize roles and pay and things like that, but unfortunately, unfortunately, I don't think that's something that would ever work. And I know a lot of companies that would do everything they could to not hire a union. So there you go. Even yeah, I don't think it would work. There's too many developers. Let's see. Mel says in game dev they say when you're 80% done, you have another 80% to do. That's that sounds about right. That sounds about right. You kind of get to a point, and then you feel like you're almost there, and then you you find out more information a lot of times. That's what happens. Or another thing that happens is you don't get as much feedback early on in the project from your client until the end, right? And it makes sense because there's not as much stuff to review and look at and give feedback on. But the more stuff you get into the project, the more stuff there is to give feedback from. And so it feels like the project just starts growing as you start getting feedback. Part of that's a planning issue. Part of that's just the reality of working with clients, which we'll talk about here in a second. But yeah, that's very true. It does feel like the project grows at the 80% mark to include another 80% of work. So I definitely get that. I have felt that for sure. Excuse me. All right, I think that's all the questions at the moment. Again, don't forget to do @DevMentorDave if you have a question that you want to catch my attention, or maybe put some question marks or something. Do something to make it kind of stand out from the regular crowd here that might be discussing things as we go. Okay, so what are some of the struggles that you need to be aware of as we go through a project in the project life cycle? The first one, and of course, you know me in alliteration. I like to alliterate things. So I've got all C's for you. So the first one is clients. Clients are the first struggle that we face, and I'll be honest with you. I have worked with a lot of great clients over the years. I've worked with some pretty bad clients as well, but I've worked with some really good clients, and this is not a uh, this is not anything against any clients necessarily. This isn't saying that clients are bad. This is just some realities about working with clients that happen pretty much with any client, whether they're a great client or a not so great client. So these are things you just need to be aware of that are probably going to happen, no matter how good your client is, no matter how much you enjoy working with them on a regular basis. It's just the reality of doing client work, and unless you unless you have your own project, you monetize and become a millionaire or something like that, you're probably going to deal with clients. And in fact, actually, if you have your own project, you're probably going to deal with clients too. They're just going to be a little bit different than a project client. But when you're building a project, you're gonna have clients, hopefully, that are paying for this project, and they're gonna have expectations, right? They're gonna have requirements. They're gonna have things that they're gonna want to see. And when you are working with a client, um, you have to understand that certain things are going to happen. And again, this happens with good clients and bad clients. So when you see these things happening, don't assume that the client is bad. Just recognize this is something you're going to have to deal with. Okay. So the first thing with clients is that there are going to be changes. No matter how much you plan from the beginning, no matter how much you try to solidify what your scope is, there's always going to be changes. Now, you can either choose to just say, no, we're not going to do that. I actually have a client that left a previous company and is using our company. And one of the things that they told me along the way was it just seemed like everything that they asked for or said, the answer was no, right? So if you want to keep clients, you can't say no all the time, but sometimes you have to say no, or sometimes you have to give them a choice and be like, look, we can do that, but it's going to affect the project. You need to, if you want to stay on time or on budget, you need to take this out, or you need to take something else out. And so you're going to run into issues with the client making changes. They're going to change. They're going to want to change things after the design has been made. And once they start using it, they're going to realize, hey, we don't really like that design. We don't like that layout. That doesn't work the way that we thought it would when we talked about it before. There's going to be changes along the way in the process. And so you have to recognize that having a client means you're going to have changes that's going to affect the project. And well, let's just be honest, changes are frustrating because we can kind of be tunnel visioned. We have an idea of what the project's going to look like and how we're going to do it. And when somebody comes along and says, hey, I need you to rewrite that, or I need you to throw that away and do it this way because of a change, that can be really frustrating. It'll kind of feel like you wasted time sometimes. And none of us likes to feel like our time's been wasted. And if we're not careful, we can kind of have that opinion of those changes. So it's better to just recognize, hey, if you're working with clients, there's going to be changes along the way. Be prepared for it. Be prepared to pivot. Be prepared to say no if you need to. Be prepared to offer advice and suggestions along the way, because clients don't always know what they want, and they don't always know what's best from a coding standpoint either. So there's going to be changes. Get used to it. But also with clients, there's going to be pressure, right? There's going to be pressure because there's a certain budget constraint, or there's a certain time frame constraint. Sometimes it's actually a quality constraint. Some clients, they have really important quality metrics that they have to meet, whether that's because they're working in an industry that requires it, or they're just really concerned about having a specific quality. And of course, don't get me wrong, we want to build things that are high quality. All right, as developers, we want to build cool stuff and we want to build quality stuff. We don't usually want to build cheap stuff because we like to make money, but we want to build cool stuff and we want to build quality stuff. And I think it's important that we recognize that there's going to be pressure from the client, and a lot of times it's going to be budget related or it's going to be time related. So it's going to be based on how much it's costing them or how soon they can get the project. And I just realized I don't have my overlay. Is it on? Hang on. All my fancy stuff. There we go. The fancy stuff's not there. Just make me feel bad. Okay. Sorry. I just a little OCD. All right. So you're going to deal with clients. So there's going to be changes. There's going to be pressure. And this is kind of a client thing, but a lot of times clients will have other entities involved, whether that's certain people within the organization, or maybe they'll have like a design firm that'll be part of the project that's outside of your company's scope, or they'll have other third-party things that need to be integrated, or that are dependencies for what you're doing. And sometimes those third parties aren't always as quick as you are to get things done. And so you're going to have oftentimes a lot of dependencies either on the client themselves to make decisions or to get you information, or your third parties that are associated with them or associated with the project that you're going to have to depend on. You're going to have to deal with from that client perspective. So that's something to think about when you're dealing with clients. There's going to be pressure, there's going to be changes, and there's going to be dependencies that at times will be frustrating. They're not going to get you the things that you need in order to move forward in the time frame that you want or that you need sometimes. And that's things you're going to have to be able to communicate back with the client and just let them know, hey, we're blocked on this issue because we're waiting on this third party, or waiting on that third party, or we're waiting on you to help us out with this piece of information, or this design, or this third party integration, or something like that. Almost every project I have worked on, almost every client project I've worked on has had some form of dependency, generally driven by the client, either somebody they wanted attached to it or the client themselves. So it's important to make sure that you understand the reality of working with a client. Okay, that's struggle number one. Struggle number one is working with a client. And unfortunately, you're going to have clients if you're going to be doing work, unless you're just building projects for fun on your own. Hey, Celestino, I see that hand raised. Are you asking a question, or are you just saying hi? I can't tell if that's hi or asking a question. It looks like you retracted. I see a couple different retracted messages, so I don't know what those were. Obviously, they were retracted, but feel free to share. You can be critical. I'm good with that. Okay, so that's struggle number one. Struggle number two, probably maybe the more obvious one, is code, right? So the reality is most projects you work on are not going to be simple. They are not going to be something that you just do all day long. Now, there are some companies where you can get a job and you literally do the same thing every day. I think that's horrible. I cannot imagine being a developer, being somewhat creative, wanting to build cool things, and being in a job where I literally do the exact same thing all day long. That would be horrible. But there are some jobs like that, and honestly, there are some people that, hey, that's perfectly fine with them. So it's not bad, but code, typically, most of the projects that I've worked on, is not the same from project to project. Even if you're using the same language, the same frameworks, it's not going to be the same. You might do a lot of similar things, but you're going to have new things and new struggles and new things that you either don't know, things that you need to learn, or things that you've not run into before from a coding standpoint that are going to be a struggle. It's gonna make you question whether or not you should have taken on the project at some point. And sometimes that struggle is going to look like learning. Sometimes that struggle is going to look like debugging, just spending a lot of time trying to figure out problems that you created with your code, and trying to figure out why something doesn't work, and researching issues and things like that. I think that's probably the place where a lot of people tend to jump ship on a project, is dealing with the code and dealing with having to try to debug things, and that can be a problem, and especially when it takes a long time, right? So you've got learning struggles with code, you've got debugging struggles with code, and then you just got time frame. You know, a lot of times you have very limited amount of time to get something done, and that time keeps ticking on. The longer you spend on a bug, the longer you spend on a ticket. And if you're struggling with things with the code, you can begin to feel like this is not going well. This project is not, it's not happening. It's not going to work. And so that's a struggle. And we're going to talk about, what we can do to kind of help with that. But that's another thing you need to realize as you go into this project. Just even if it sounds like a project that you think should be pretty simple, you're probably going to run into things that are a struggle. Even on the DeepPockets project, you've probably run into some things that you thought you understood and it just didn't work the first time that you wrote the code, and it didn't work the way that you thought it should. Or maybe you got a PR review and it came back and said, hey, this isn't the right way to do it, or you need to make these changes. And maybe that happened multiple times. That can be really frustrating, right? When you put up a PR and you think you've got it working, and then they come back and say, change this, and you change that, and you put it back up, and then they come back and say, change this other thing. That can be really frustrating from a coding standpoint, from a code process. And so you need to understand that is going to be part of most projects, especially any project that you're working on with a team. You're going to go through most likely some sort of PR review. You're going to have those situations where people are going to push code back to you that you thought was fine. And so there is going to be a struggle in the code writing, in the code team dynamics. So there's going to be lots of areas of struggle with code. So you've got clients, you've got code, and then that can often lead to struggles in confidence. So clients, code, and confidence. Even recently, I've been working on a project. I've been doing a little bit more dev work than I have in the past year or so. And I've questioned whether or not I knew what I was doing at times, because when you start struggling with the client or with code, you can begin to lose confidence that you actually know what you're doing. And part of that is good, because it should hopefully force you to learn more and to grow and to change. But part of that is bad, because it could, if not controlled, it could lead you to give up. And I think you just need to realize that everyone deals with that. Sometimes we call that imposter syndrome. The idea that you don't really deserve to be where you are, or that you can't really do the job. The reality is everyone goes through that, and that's going to be a normal struggle. You're going to reach a point in the process, in the project, probably on every project, where you feel like you just can't do whatever it is that you're supposed to do. Now, you might just be doing a very simple project and you can just knock everything out because you've done it before or done something similar before. That's great. But most projects I've been on, there's been at least one point, if not many, where I felt like, I don't know if I can even do this. I don't know if I belong here, and maybe it's a brand new project idea and you don't know anything about it. You've got to do a bunch of research. You're excited about it, but it hits pretty early, that struggle where you're like, I don't even know where to begin. And you might start to feel this imposter syndrome. So you want to make sure that you're aware that your confidence could be shaken. And again, that confidence can be shaken by interacting with clients. It can be shaken by interacting with the code base. And there's kind of lots of different things. It can also happen with your own employer. If you've got an employer that's, kind of really pushing on you and maybe doesn't give you the support that you really need, but there's a lot of pressure still, that can hurt your confidence as well. So you need to be aware that projects are going to challenge your confidence. All right, so we've got clients, we've got code, we've got confidence. Celestino says, most clients don't know how to communicate effectively. I struggled with my first client in Upwork. That was a nightmare for me, even though the project was very simple. That's very true. And I would say it's both. It's the clients don't know how to communicate with developers a lot of times, and developers often are not very good at working with clients. They think in technical terms and often don't really know how to translate that into real world. So that's a skill set I would encourage you to work on, because it really is a two-way street. It's not just a problem from the client, it's also a problem from the developer. And it's a problem for developers too, to make sure that we are doing our best to communicate to the client our understanding of what they said, right? So when they give us some instruction, come back and explain it in our words, or try to explain it the way that we understood it. Give them examples, things like that. and try to help that client communication, because especially something like Upwork, where you're often dealing directly with a specific client that usually is not technical. That's those types of interactions are going to be much harder than if you're working inside of an organization, and where you've got a lead. A lead can usually give you better direction, or where you're working with clients that have their own tech team. A couple of the clients that I work with right now have their own IT people. They have their own developers in some cases. And so they have people that can communicate with us a little bit easier. But yeah, especially if you're working with a client that doesn't have any technical knowledge or experience, then you're definitely going to have to be much more careful in understanding them and in making sure that they understand you in that process. Absolutely, Celestino. All right, so we've got clients, code, confidence, and then I need another C, so care, right? Care. Most projects that you are on, at some point in the project, you will not care anymore about the project. Hopefully that's very late in the project and not early in the project. Hopefully that's more when you're dealing with bugs. A lot of times it's when you're dealing with bugs. Usually when you're building stuff, you still care, right? You still care about the quality. You still care about the deadline. You still care about the excitement is still a little bit there of actually building something new. But then when you think you've pretty much when you've hit that 80% mark, right, that we were talking about, and then you find out there's 80% more. When that happens, that's a point where you can be tempted to not care anymore. And that's a very dangerous place, because when apathy when apathy sets in, that's not good for you in your productivity, and that's not good for the client and them actually getting what they're looking for. And at the end of the day, that's not good for you, for your reputation and payment, right? If you lose your care, if you become apathetic, you may lose your job or you lose the project. But this is something that happens, right? No matter how excited you are at the beginning, no matter how well you fought through and struggled through, there are going to be times, maybe it's just a day, maybe it's a week, where you're going to lose any care for the project. You don't really care whether it succeeds or whether it fails. And that's a place that you need to learn to pull yourself out of as quickly as possible, for multiple people's sake. But you're going to hit that point. You're gonna hit that point. You're gonna be like, why am I even doing this? This is dumb, or this is a waste of time, or lots of other things. And you're going to lose the desire to work on the project. You're not really going to care about it anymore. And that's just human nature. Okay. Let's put that out there. It's just human nature. Everybody's going to deal with it at some point. The question is, how do you deal with it, right? Do you give in to that feeling of not caring anymore and walk away, or do a poor job, or whatever that is? And then, or do you push forward? Do you think about the client? Do you think about the success of the project? We'll talk about this here in a minute as far as how do we succeed, right? But you've got to pull yourself out of the apathy. You've got to make sure that there is some care that you still have. Maybe you don't care about, the specific thing that you're working on, but maybe there's other things in your life that you care about that keep you moving forward, right? Because there's going to be a point in the project where you don't really care whether the project succeeds or not. You just want to be done. And that can be a problem. And that kind of leads us to the last one, which is completion, right? So clients, code, confidence, care, and completion. You say completion isn't a struggle. Why is completion a struggle? Well, we kind of already talked about it a little bit. It's that extra 80%, right? It's you getting near the end. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel. You're almost there. And then you get hit with a huge bug list of things that need to be fixed. Or maybe there's some last minute changes that you felt like you were pretty much done. And all of a sudden you've got to add several more features to this project that, weren't really laid out beforehand, or that you didn't understand, or something like that, right? And so you've got all these changes at the end. You starting to see light at the end of the tunnel, and you want to be excited, but there's that extra struggle there at the end, and that's the struggle of completion. And that may look like extra work. It may just look like deadlines. The completion aspect may just look like a looming deadline, and you're not sure if you're going to make it. And that's a struggle. And sometimes that struggle means that you're putting in overtime, you're putting in extra hours, you're losing some sleep along the way. And that's never fun, right? That's the no more fun part of the project. And so we've got to realize that even the completion phase of the project can be a very difficult struggle. Sometimes it's even just actually pushing things out to production. So we've had projects in multiple jobs that I've worked in where everything got done. We finished the project, everything looked great in staging, push it to production, and it doesn't work, or it doesn't work correctly because there's something that wasn't set up right in production, or something that's different between production and staging from an environment standpoint, or something like that. And so even the completion of the project, while hopefully when it's done, we have that excitement piece and we push it and it works and everybody's happy, even the completion part can be a struggle. And so we've got to recognize that before we go into the project. And again, if you recognize these 5 struggle areas: clients, code, confidence, care, and completion, if you recognize those, if you plan for those, then when those things happen, when you're in that struggle, you can already have a plan in place to help you move forward and be successful. So what does that look like, right? So what does it look like to actually be successful in the midst of the struggle? We'll talk about that here in a second. I think there's another thing that popped up. Mel says, is it possible to care for a project too much also? Interesting. Almost like if the project stops receiving support, it's like part of you died, or do you just end up hating every project? I think there's a little bit, no matter whether it's your project or somebody else's project, I think there's always a little bit of hatred for the project at some point. It doesn't have to last. Especially, again, once you get it done, like there's that euphoria of getting it done. So you kind of forget a little bit of the hate. But I think I would say at different points in the project, there's going to be some dislike of the project itself, or of like some of those other things of the code base, or some of the third party issues that the clients involve, or just lots of different things that are probably at some point going to make you hate most projects, unless it's very, very short. There's going to be something that you don't like. And so that's why, we need to talk about how do we plan for that? How do we set ourselves up for success when we do? As far as caring too much, I think you can. Whoa, sorry. I think you can care too much. Typically, that's going to be your project, though, and more than likely, you're just going to keep working at it, or you'll decide that it's not worth it and you'll walk away. I would say if you do care too much, if you care to the point where you are viewing other people in a bad light, whether that's other developers working with you, or whether that's a client who's not going along with your suggestions, that could be it. That could be something that happens where you care so much about this project, you really want this project to succeed, and you have lots of ideas that you want to integrate in this project, and the client keeps saying, no, I don't like that. No, let's not do that. You could get really disappointed and angry about that project too, because you almost care too much. You want it almost to be your project. And I think that's important to remember when it comes to doing projects for clients. It's not your project. Now, should we offer suggestions? Should we help them out? Absolutely. I mean, that's part of our role as the developer, as the programmer, as the company that's helping this client. That's part of our role. We need to do that, but we also need to understand at the end of the day, it's their project, and we can guide them, we can help them, we can give suggestions, We can remind them that making certain decisions are going to have impacts down the road. But at the end of the day, it's their project, and it's our job to make it as much what they want it to be as possible within the budget and the time restraints that they have. So, and to be honest all the way through that process with them. So, yeah, I think there are instances where you can care too much, and I think that's why I think it's important to separate what is work and what is passion, right? And not that those two things can't combine, but you've got to be able to keep them separate to some degree. Some of the projects that we work on are work, and some of the projects we work on are passion. Recognize the differences and respond accordingly, and catch yourself when you're responding in a way that you shouldn't. Celestino says everybody has his own way of writing code. Do you think as beginners we should spend some time reading others' code? I think you should always spend time reading other people's code. One of the recommendations that I actually made in a not too long ago video, I forget which one it was off the top of my head, but that to me is one of the ways that you can learn and grow is doing PR reviews, right? So you can go to a repository that's a public repository, and you can do a review. Now, they may not want you to do it. You don't necessarily have to like put it out there in public, but you can do it for yourself. Go through, read the code, see if you understand it, see if it makes sense, see if there's something that you've not used before that might be something that you should implement in the way that you're doing code. I highly recommend that you do that. Most people won't, because that's time consuming. And especially if you already have a job, typically you're required to do some sort of reviewing of other team members' code. Unless sometimes juniors are not asked to do that, but I typically will, just because I want them to get used to doing that. And for this reason, it gives them the opportunity to learn from other people, some techniques that they may not know now. And it gives them the ability to say, that's another way of doing, I would have done it differently, but that works just as well, or it works better, or it doesn't work as well. So it helps you learn to evaluate your own code by evaluating other people's code. So I would definitely spend time here and there going through code that other people have written, and just trying to understand it, trying to figure it out. Oh yeah, that's right. Thank you, Mel. The easiest way to guarantee perfect code. No, that's not it. That's the newest one. That one's more of a joke. I'll find it. I'll find it and see if I can link to it. There's another one. I don't remember. Let me see. Hang on one second. Let me see if I can find my notes from it. Let's see. I don't see the notes. Sometimes I archive my notes after I do a video, so I don't always remember what it was. Let's see. I don't know. I'll have to see if I can find it. It was sometime in the last 3 months. But yeah, there's one that'll mention, it talks about different ways that you can learn and grow. And one of those is actually reading other people's code. So I would highly recommend that, actually. All right, so how do we succeed when we're dealing with these struggle areas of a project? You know, you've started off, you enjoy it, and then you hit the struggle, one of these 5 struggles, or maybe other struggles. If you can think of other struggles that I didn't cover, you know, shoot them in the chat, or leave them here if you're watching later. Leave them as a comment, and maybe we'll talk through those as well. But how do we succeed? I think there's several ways. I think the first thing that you have to do is remember your why. Remember why it is you're doing what you're doing. And your why may have nothing to do with the project, right? Your why just may be personal, right? It may be that you are doing this project because you want to grow in some way, in your knowledge and your experience. It could be that you're doing the project because somebody's willing to pay you to do it, right? Whether that's a an employer, or whether that's a project, a client, excuse me, a freelance project. So that may be the simple motivation. And if you don't get this project done, you're not going to get paid. Maybe you get a little bit up front, or if you don't get this project done, you're not going to have a job anymore, if you're not successful. So I think the important thing, and I think the thing that we need to kind of have as a caveat for all the other things that I'm going to talk about here from a success standpoint, is the why. What is driving you to do what you're doing in this project? What is driving you to make you work on this project, to be successful in this project? You've got to know your why. If you don't have a reason, then you won't have any reason to stay. Maybe it's just as simple as you want to make this client happy. Maybe it's a friend and you really want to help them out with their business. Or maybe, again, it's just a good client. You really want that relationship to go well with that client. Whatever the why is, the first step to being successful in your project is keeping that kind of up in my mind, kind of the upper right hand corner of my mind's eye. Here's the why. This is why I'm doing this project. This is why I'm working on this. And that is kind of like a filter for some of these other things, right? So how can you be successful with the project? Remember your why. Remember why it is you're doing it. Another thing that you can do to be successful in projects is to set boundaries and to set priorities. And for me, these kind of go hand in hand, right? You set your boundaries based on your priorities. So, for example, your priority may be family, right? That should be most likely be a higher priority than your job. Now, sometimes job has to trump family, so that you can support the family. The priority of family is supported by having the job. So there might be some things, balancing acts there in that, but set priorities and then set boundaries around those priorities. If you have a priority of making it to all your kids' baseball games, then you are going to have to set boundaries with your client or with your employer around when you're available. And that can be really hard to do, especially if you have an employer or a client who's really pushy. That can be hard to set those boundaries, but you want to try as much as possible when you begin employment, or when you begin a project with a client as a freelance project, that you set those boundaries and you set those expectations of how you're going to interact with them, how you're going to go through the project, how you're going to communicate. It might not be a good idea to give the client your personal phone number, because then they'll text you or they'll call you when you don't want to be available. Maybe you go through, you have set up certain parameters of this is when I will be working and this is when I'm available for conversations. And I don't know if you've ever read the 4-Hour Work Week. I forget who the author is. There's lots of things he talks about in there that, quite frankly, sound good, but most people can't actually implement in the real world. But one of the things that he talks about in Tim Ferriss, that's who wrote it. One of the things he talks about in that is kind of setting boundaries and expectations around communication. So like, I'm only available, or I only check my email from noon to 1, something like that. Now, again, for some people that's impractical in their business, and that's fine. But if you could do something like that, if you can set a boundary, that's great. And again, it may not have to be that specific boundary, but it's about setting up expectations based on your priorities and creating boundaries around that. And that will help you not only manage the project and manage your time, that'll help you manage the client as well in that process. So that'll kind of help you have some success in some of those struggle areas. All right, so remember your why, set up boundaries and priorities, and then thirdly, be honest and get help. Be honest and get help. Now, this is a balancing act because, of course, I've told you many times that one of the things that separates a junior developer from a senior developer or even a mid-level developer is the frequency of needing help, right? The frequency of asking for help, the frequency of the inability to know how to get the answers to the questions that they have, right? That's a growth process. That's something that happens over time, and that's fine. We understand that. That's a reality of being a junior developer. You will grow in that process just kind of naturally, and you can do things to help yourself grow in that process as well. But you've got to know when you're hitting that point. I've worked with even senior level developers who spend way too much time dealing with struggling through something with code, research, all these things before they raise their hand and say, hey, I need some help. And at the end of the day, especially when it comes to a project, if you've got a limited budget, limited time, you've got to be willing to admit when you need help. Be honest with yourself, admit when you need help, and then go get it. Go ask for help. Maybe that's a coworker. Maybe that's, talking to, you're trying to integrate some third-party application and you got to get help from their people to help you figure out the issue that you're dealing with. Whatever that looks like, you need to know, kind of learn to feel that right point where you need to stop trying to figure it out and go get help from somebody else. And again, as a junior, that's going to happen earlier. And then as you go, that's going to happen a little bit later as you get used to debugging and things like that. But even as senior developers, we've got to be very careful about recognizing in the project process when we need to be honest about when we need help and then go actually get the help and find the solutions that we need, whether that's another individual or whether that's a third party or something like that. So remember your why, set your boundaries, be honest, and get help. Number 4, take your health into consideration. And I said it that way on purpose because I don't mean that it has to be the number one priority. What I mean is it needs to be a priority. And again, I think I just mentioned, I've been spending a lot of late nights working on a project for a client that I'm working with, and we got home last night and I was literally just kind of staring off in the distance, and my wife was like, you need to go to bed, you need to get some sleep because you haven't gotten a lot of sleep lately. And we need to be willing to recognize those realities. This is a mentally draining job, even though we're probably sitting most of the time. You might do some work standing depending on how weird you are, but most of the time we're sitting, so it doesn't feel like it's that big of a physical stress, but we have a lot of mental stress in this job. And so you need to recognize as you're going through the project when you are being unhealthy in that project, and then try to correct the course. Are there going to be times where you're going to have to do some late nights and you're going to have to punish yourself a little bit physically? Yes, that's probably going to happen. Hopefully not very often, but it's probably going to happen. But you've got to recognize that and have a plan for it. You need to realize, hey, I need to spend some extra time sleeping. I need to maybe eat a little bit better because I've been eating a lot of junk food or a lot of quick food. So I need to take some time, make sure that I eat some good food here for a while. I need to spend some time away from the keyboard working on relationships and building relationships with my spouse or with my kids or with other family members or friends, things like that. We need to recognize these healthy aspects of our lives and make sure that we are pursuing those. Again, at times those can suffer, and it's okay for them to suffer a little bit. But if we let them suffer too long or too much, it's going to burn us out, and we're not going to like what we do anymore. We're going to think, again, it's going to play into that confidence factor, whether or not we actually can do the job. And so you've got to make sure that you are taking care of yourself from a health standpoint as much as you can. Now, obviously, nobody's perfect at that. I'm overweight. I need to work on that. So I'm not saying that you have to be a perfect specimen of health, but there are certain things, especially sleep, what we eat, and then our relationships. Those are important things that I consider part of health, mental health especially. So you need to make sure that you are that you are focusing on your health as well. The next way that you can succeed, excuse me, let me get a drink. Ooh, okay. The next way you can succeed is by learning to say no. And we kind of covered this a little bit, but there are times where you just have to say no. That's no to a client, no to an employer, even maybe no to things that you personally want to do. You know, there are times where I want to do some things for the Dev Mentor Dave YouTube channel, and just based off other things, the level of priorities in my life, I don't get to do that. And it's unfortunate, but sometimes I just have to say no to certain things. So learn to say no. That can be so helpful from a mental standpoint, to just have, it's almost like this power. If you just have the power to say no, it's like something that sometimes you feel like you don't have that power. You do, and you should use it. And then sometimes you just have to do it. You know, sometimes it's just a matter of pushing through, and you succeed by just pushing through, by just putting your nose to the grindstone and just pushing forward. And that's not a fun thing to do to be successful. It's not a touchy-feely thing to do to be successful, but a lot of times that's just what you need to do. And you need to be the type of person that's okay with just pushing forward and doing what is necessary to get the job done. A lot of times that's probably the most important thing that you need to do to succeed. And then the last thing that you need to do to be successful in your projects is celebrate the completion. You know, a lot of times we get done with a project and we're just more like, oh, man, we're just more of a relax, you know, I can't believe it's finally over. Or we might jump right into like a retrospective meeting and talk about, you know, what was good and what was bad and what do we want to change. And not that that's a bad thing to do, but a lot of times there's not a lot of time spent in those on celebrating the success. So celebrate the success, whatever that looks like for you, whether that's going out and having a good meal or just, you know, having a cheering session with your team or whatever that looks like. But enjoy the success when it's over. Enjoy the completion of the project. Celebrate it. Talk about it. You know, one of the things that we try to do at times at work is celebrate when people complete their projects. We'll put it in our Slack and we'll say congratulations and good job. And it's not perfect, but it's a way of celebrating the completion of a project, the success of a project. Even if it didn't feel like it was that successful, it's done, right? So celebrate it. All right. So those are some things that you can do to help you succeed through the struggles of the projects that you're going through. All right. I think there's a couple questions in here, and then we'll talk about how does this impact the DeepPockets project. All right. So let's see. Ali says, as a junior, how much can we improve the way we approach projects and know from where to start the project? How can we improve the way that we approach projects? This is not going to be a fun answer, Ali, but practice. Practice and having other people evaluate it, right? That's one of the great things about pull request reviews, is that's like a microcosm of what you're talking about. So when you put up a pull request, you're inviting people to investigate it and tell you what they think they would do differently, or if it's good, give you kudos or whatever that is. So part of that is having mentors in your life, having other people in your life, other developers in your life that can kind of evaluate that with you and walk through it with you in a way that's going to help you see areas where you can improve, or help you see that you did something well. You know, somebody who's going to be encouraging to you along the way. I think another thing, go back and watch the other live streams because we talked a lot in the very beginning on this project, specifically how to approach a project and the things that you need to do at the beginning of a project to set yourself up for success. And again, that's not always going to be perfect, but you're still going to have a lot of these struggles, but just recognizing how to start the project. I would go back and watch some of those earlier DeepPockets live streams, because we're going to talk a lot about that in more detail. The other thing that I would say, Ali, is remember that everyone is still learning, and you're still learning, and you're going to keep learning your entire career. There are things that I have learned from recent projects at work that I will implement further. Um, and I've done a lot of projects in the past, but these are new things that I learned, new ways to approach things, new things to consider, or gotchas to worry about, right? So there are things that I've learned here, even in the last week, 2 weeks, working on some projects that will help me grow further in the way that I handle projects in my current role. So understand that there is no perfect way to start. There's gonna be something that you forget or you don't know about. And there's going to be things, no matter how good it starts, that the project could veer off in a way that doesn't feel very good at the time. And so just understand that everything is a learning experience, and try to learn from everything that you experience. All right, that actually sounds pretty good. Everything's a learning experience, and try to learn from everything you experience. There you go. Ha! I'm gonna have to write that down. All right, hopefully that answers your question and helps. Let's see. Okay, so how does this reality of projects impact the DeepPockets project? Now, obviously, we don't have a client that is a jerk. Hopefully, I'm the client, so hopefully I'm not a jerk. But I am going to introduce some things into this project that clients typically do. And so we are going to have, I want that to happen so that you guys can feel some of that frustration and feel some of that struggle as you go through this process. So I'm actually going to try to implement that to some degree. But we don't have a deadline for the project. We don't have, a lot of pressure from a client standpoint. And one of the questions that I was asked was, can I jump in? Right? We had a new person join the project who hasn't been. Is it too late to get in? No, it's not. This project is designed for you guys to get experience doing specific things, and part of that's learning new stuff along the way. Part of that is being a part of a team, going through pull request reviews, things like that, right? So this project is for you. So if you are watching this and you haven't been participating yet, but now we're writing code and you're like, well, maybe I do want to try to jump in there, do it. Jump in. Send me your information in the DevMentor Dave Discord server, and I'll start getting you some tickets as we start doing individual tickets here in a couple of weeks. So jump in. You can jump in at any time. This project's not like a normal project in that instance. It's here for you. There's no deadline. You can jump in anytime and participate and grow. Another thing is kind of a joke, but how long is this project going to last? Well, there is no deadline. So it's going to last as long as it lasts. And that means that there is no light at the end of the tunnel. No, there will be at some point. There will be a light at the end of the tunnel. We'll put the kibosh on it and say we're going to be done, after this feature or something like that. But the important thing I want you to remember or to understand is these things we just talked about success, learning to say no, learning to set your own priorities. You need to do that with this project. So if you need to not work on it for a few weeks because you have other priorities, you've got things that are more important, please don't feel bad. All right. This project is here specifically for that. It's here for you to learn and grow. So please don't feel bad if you've got to stop for a few weeks or even just a few days, or if you start a ticket and you just don't have time to finish and you need to pass it to somebody else, that's okay. We're not a real dev shop, all right? So we're not relying on you to absolutely get things done. We can switch who does what. People can take over the work that you've started. It's not the end of the world. So please do not look at this project as something more than what it is. And don't look at yourself as a failure if for some reason you are not able to do the things that you were able to do 5 weeks ago. right? From an availability standpoint. Okay, so those are a couple of things that I wanted to really talk through with the DeepPockets project, but in the context of how projects work in general, because the struggles that you're dealing with on this project are struggles you're going to deal with on every project, almost every project, probably for the rest of your career. And so you need to learn how to interact with those realities, how to know about them, how to deal with them moving forward, so that it really does make it easier for you to be successful in your career. That doesn't mean it'll be easy. It'll never be easy. It's a difficult career. It's mentally draining, especially, but you can do it successfully if you know what's coming and you can plan for it, right? So a prudent person sees the struggle and they plan for it. All right. So I think there were a couple other questions down here. Let's see if there's anything else I can answer before we take a look at some PRs. Let's see. Did that one. CW says, I don't know how true this is. Anyone feel that all the good jobs are already taken or on hold by the existing, or held onto by the existing staff? Yes and no. I think there are always new projects. There are always new companies being started. There's always turnover at companies. There's people that are retiring. It seems like they don't necessarily retire that early from a tech job. I don't know. That'd be a good thing for me to think about, or research, I should say. But yeah, I think I don't think that's true. I think it's just right now we're dealing with some economic issues. We're dealing with the impact of AI and people being nervous about AI, people trying to implement it and not doing it well or not knowing how to, people thinking that AI is going to be able to revolutionize the industry so they don't need to hire as many people. They're going to find out that's wrong. There's multiple things that are going on right now as to why people are not hiring, but I think I don't think it's that people are just hanging on to jobs. I think the jobs are out there. It's just a matter of finding them. Obviously, there's not enough of them at the moment, but I think part of it's too finding the jobs that are out there and seeing what you can do to fit yourself into the requirements for that job. That's a big key. Another thing is trying to figure out how to do your projects in such a way that give you experience that other junior devs are not going to think about. The video that I just put out that's on the channel right now gives you an approach to that. We kind of talked about that last week at the end. That's why I did that video, to kind of flesh that out a little bit more than my ramblings during the Q&A time. So I think there are jobs out there. It's just a matter of finding them and a matter of maybe changing what you're looking for in that regard. So I don't think there's necessarily this conspiracy, though. Mel says, I think the grass is greener on the other side. The good job others have, but you don't are often not what you think they are. That's very true. You may find that you jump ship from one company to another, and pretty much the same struggles that you had at one company are the same struggles that you have at another. Most companies deal with the same issues, just different people. And so that's something to keep in mind if you're thinking about jumping ship. Now, there are good reasons to jump ship, but that is something to consider. The grass is always greener may not be the case. I've never had to do that, Mel. If you start a project at a company and then leave the company and then come back to it. I actually did have a coworker leave and go to another company that I had worked for before, and found code that I had written that they promptly deleted, by the way. But that was kind of funny. They sent me a message and told me about it. But apparently the average age of a COBOL dev is 55 to 60. Yeah, I don't think developers know how to retire. Probably because they don't always do a good job of setting themselves up for retirement. For one, from a budgeting standpoint, which is one of the reasons for doing the DeepPockets project. So there you go. All right, so let's jump over to. I don't see any other questions. Let's jump over to some PRs real quick. Ooh, water's almost gone. Okay. Let's look at these. And I don't know. I have not looked at them, so I'm not sure if anything's been done since. Go. Okay. Let's see. That's issues, pull requests. Okay, so we've got 3 pull requests in here. Let's look at this one. This is for number 2. Have I reviewed this before? I don't know if I did. There was one question on ticket number 2. It might have been Ali, but I'm not sure who asked the question. um, but it was around why we weren't doing seeders for everything. And the reason for that is because you don't necessarily want to seed the database for everything. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you have things that need to be seeded for production. Sometimes you have things that that are seeders for your own tests. If you're writing tests, then which we will get to at some point, then you'll want to have some seeders. Sometimes your tests though don't run seeders. Sometimes they create the data in the test, right? So you don't necessarily have to have seeders for all the tests that you're running. So there are, in my experience, typically I make a seeder for production, and then for anything that that I want to use to test manually, because usually the tests will do some sort of seeding on its own. You can use seeders in your tests if you want to do that, and so in that case, maybe you would do it for every entity, every resource, but it's not necessarily a requirement. Let's see. All right, so let's take a look at this. Now, the goal on this one. Let's look at the community ticket. All right, we're supposed to create seeders that use factories that create the following entities: 2 accounts, 1 budget, 5 budget line items, and 5 bills. All right. Gave you some documentation here. So let's take a look at this one. I feel like we looked at one. Maybe it was Ali's that we looked at. We'll see. Let's see. So we've got multiple commits and files changed. Okay. So the first thing we want to look for is our seeders and make sure we've got the seeders that were required. All right. So we want 2 accounts. So we got accounts, budget line items, and bills. So we've got account, budgets, budget line items, and bills. And then we have a budget category seeder. That's probably going to be a dependency, would be my guess, for the budget line items, which is going to be in the factory. Very good. So let's look at these just to make sure. We've got factory count 2 for accounts. We wanted 2 accounts, 1 budget, 5 budget line items. And then we've got bills. We had 5 bills, so factory count 5 create. Isn't this nice and clean? That's one nice thing about factories is it kind of abstracts some code so you can see a little bit easier what code's doing at some points. Now, sometimes abstraction gets crazy, but sometimes it's really helpful to make clean code. All right, so we got 5 bills. All right, here's our categories. So we're creating the categories based off of this array. This spacing is a little funky, but it's not a big deal. Create name category. All right, so we're creating a bunch of categories, or we're creating a budget category for each of these, right? So that's a seeder. Something to keep in mind is if you run seeders multiple times and you're not specifying specific ones, like if you go back to your database seeder here, so we've got these seeders in here, budget seeder, budget category seeder. It's going to run this every time that you run the seed command. So that means this budget category seeder is going to happen. You're going to get duplicates, basically, is what's going to happen, because I don't think the name field is unique. So you're going to get if you run the seeder more than once, you're going to get the duplicate code. You're going to get duplicate entries in your database. Let's see. Sorry, I was going to. Read above line. Made sure to keep the number of functions. Transaction typo. All right. Well, I'll take a look at that. Let me know what file that's in. Okay. So this looks good, but something that I might would do is have a check inside your for each and just see. Well, actually, there's a command in Laravel. I think it's create. Is it create or update? Hang on. Is there a home button? I never use a home button. Create or update. There we go. Upsert is another command that you could use. I couldn't remember if it was create an update or upsert. Okay, so you can use upsert instead. And what that would do is for something like this that you don't want to duplicate, that you have specific entities in here, you're not using faker or something like that, you could change create to an upsert, and that would make sure that it doesn't create duplicates. All right, let's see. That looks good. Factory count 5. I think we looked at all of these. Okay, so those look good. Let's take a look at our models. Timestamps false. I would typically leave timestamps. Generally, I find them useful at some point. So I would generally keep the timestamps in these. I think they might have been missing from our diagram, but I would go ahead and keep the timestamps on your models, which means you might have to update migrations because the migrations probably didn't include the timestamps. Let's see. Has factory, guarded, has factory. Okay, budget line items. You've got a relationship built in here. Nice. Budget line items. Has many. Budget line item class. Wait, hang on. Budget category. Okay, gotcha. Okay. Budget line item. Belongs to budgets, belongs to budget categories. That's good and fine. Name fake word. All right. So this is the account factory. So we're creating an account and we just need a name. So that's good. So here's our factory. And we can call that factory and get a fake word for every time. Perfect. Frequency, year, quarter, month, week, once a week. All right. So random element. Good. Number between. Nice. Start date, end date. Budget factory. Name, year, word, date. All right. I'm not seeing anything obvious here, so that looks good. Okay, so let's pull it down. What branch is this? Go back. Copy. All right. Let's pull this down and check out this one. I always like to pull it again for some reason. Felt weird using fake name since it's a human name. Yeah, I get it. That makes sense. Let's see. All right, now I'm going to do artisan migrate fresh just to kill my database. And let's just see what the files look like here. So we've got your migration files, we've got account seeders, and we've got factories in here. So that all looks good. All right. So migrate fresh, then I'm going to do -- seed. And so this should migrate, this should tear everything out of my database, should migrate everything again based on the current migrations, and should automatically seed the database. All right, so let's see what happens. Oh, hang on. Yeah, if you spell things correctly, that also helps. Oh, come on. Migrate, fresh, seed. All right, dropped all the tables, ran all the migrations. That's good. Seeding the database, done, 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 done. All right, let's take a look at our database here. I thought I had it up. 1 second. Laravel. Okay, here we go. Let's look at the database. So we've got accounts. So we've got 2 accounts in there. We've got 5 bills with amounts, different frequencies. So that's good. We've got budget categories. We've got line items with amounts and budgets. Very good. And we've got 1 budget. Awesome. Okay. So all of that worked really well. I didn't see any issues with this. So the only thing that I would say, like for example, let's take a look at accounts. I think accounts have, oh, they don't. Okay. Yeah. I think the one thing that I would say, and I would probably not put this on the PR, I would do this as a side, maybe an extra ticket. So that's why I'm not going to put it on this PR either. What I would say is go back and update your migrations to include timestamps on all of your migrations, because it's pretty rare that you don't want timestamps on a table, at least in my experience. But everything else on here, I would give this an approval. So good job. So we'll approve that one. We're not necessarily gonna merge this one in. I'll decide later what I want to do from a merge standpoint. But let's take a look at a couple others here. Give me 1 second. All right. Sorry, I needed to tell a little person something. Okay. So let's take a look at the second one here. Let's see. Files changed. Okay, so we've got our models in here. There's a few more models than are necessary. Same with the factories and seeders. I think this is this the one that was asking about doing a lot? Yeah, good job, Mel. Good job. Okay, so let's see. This looks good. That looks good. Hey, are you noticing a pattern here? These all look very similar. Now, of course, these don't have, it doesn't look like these have any relationships. The relationships were not part of the ticket. So that was just kind of an extra thing that Mel added into hers, which is good. You'll have to do that eventually, but was not part of the ticket, so that's not a problem as far as this PR is concerned. Factories. Okay. Fake name. That works fine. Balance. Oh, we got some fancy stuff here. All right, so we're getting an account ID based off of the account. Very good. Actually, that's a good point. See, this is why you look at other people's code. Let me go back to Mel's real fast. we just... Is it something that I missed? That's not what I want. Let's take a look at something here. Oh, you did it through relationships. That's why you did that. Where's it at? Budget line item. Category ID. Oh, you just didn't have the accounts. Hang on a second. What's going on here? We've got... Is this something that we didn't need to do? Balance. Oh, this is a balance factory. So that wasn't part of the ticket. So that's not necessary. It's not necessarily wrong, but it's not necessary for the ticket. Bill factory. That looks good. Budget factory. That's fine. Let's see. Budget factory. Wait a minute. Budget category factory. Okay. Budget factory. Budget line item factory. All right. Yeah, this is where... okay, let me look at the line item. All right, hang on one second. All right. So sorry about that. Okay. So this is a good idea. What did we do over here for budget line item factory? Okay. So you just picked a random one. That's not necessarily bad either. It's just a different way of doing it. Yeah. So it's kind of two different ways. See, you can write the same code and it can be two different ways. So good job. All right, so that all looks good. That looks good. Getting an account ID. That's another way to do it. Return. Oh, interesting. So you got two at the beginning and then you put one here and one there. Huh. Nifty. Okay. Yeah, this all looks good. I'm not seeing anything. I'm kind of glancing through now. Count 5, count 1. Call the seeders. Bill seeders. Okay, let's run it. Let's see if it works because everything looks good to me. Let's copy this. Come back over here. We'll do get checkout and get pull. All right, now we're going to do sale artisan, migrate, fresh, seed. Come on. Artisan. All right, there we go. Uh-oh, we got an error. What happened? Drop the tables, migrate the tables, budget seeder. Not found. Unknown column, update at and field list. See, this is why you actually run the code. All right. Connection, insert budgets. So it's on the budget seeder. Unknown column, update at. All right, budget seeder. Budget factory. Budget factory. Oh, you know what? Let's look at the budget model. The budget model says that assumes that there are timestamps. But I don't think we have timestamps in the migration. Let's see. Create budgets. We do not have timestamps in the budget table. So that's going to be the bug there. All right, I'll take a look at that CW and see if some of that is part of the main branch and we can get that updated. If anybody else wants to look at the main branch and see if there's any issues that they can fix and put a PR up, let me know. But I'll take a look at that. So, but that failed for now. So I'm just going to, just for my own sanity, leave a comment. Failing on updated column in Cedar. Probably needs to have timestamps ignored. And all right. So I'll set this to request changes just for now. So we'll submit that one. And then I apologize. I actually need to get going. Guys, somebody's trying to get a hold of me. So I'm going to cut this short today. So I'll try to look at yours and leave a comment later. So I apologize. I'm not going to be able to do it on the live stream today. So hopefully that's helpful. I'll try to leave another one on Ali's if it's a good or not. If everything works out correctly, we might just merge in the first one that we looked at. If we have a couple that might be mergeable, then I'll make a decision and merge one of those in. So good job, though. Everything from a code standpoint mostly looks good. So that's encouraging to me. Hopefully should be encouraging to you. But anyway, thank you for jumping on, guys. Sorry to cut this short a little quickly and a little abruptly, but I gotta go take care of some things. So I will see you all in a couple weeks on Monday the 29th, Monday evening the 29th, and then I'll have another video out by the end of next week, Friday, with some homework assignments and things like that. So, did I do the wrong thing? Oh, I did. Sorry. I'll fix it later. You're right. I'm on the other ticket. All right. I'll see you guys. Thanks, and have a great day. I'll see you guys next time I see you.